Well, hello, everybody, and welcome to another live episode of Jim and Rob Overanalyze Movies, the video podcast where we like to have a deeper conversation about the movies we watched today. And yeah, I think today we got another banger for you. That's right, folks. We are going to be diving deep into the menu from 2022, a bit of a, you could say it was a bit of a darling, an award show darling, although it was one of those. Jim, would you say this flick was, in a way, one of those always the bridesmaid, never the bride?
Yeah, it came around, and I have to admit, I didn't really have tons of interest in seeing this one when it came out in the theater. We'll discuss that later. But my son had seen it, I believe. I just texted him, and he hasn't gotten back to me. But I thought he kind of likes those. He likes the horror-y, or horror-adjacent movies, like a lot of those 20-somethings these days. But yeah, so it didn't intrigue me initially.
Yeah. Well, let's take a look at. Let's take a look at the trailer, and we'll come back to that.
Is that going to fit everyone?
Yeah, easily. 12 customers total.
How do they turn a profit?
$12.50 a head, that's how.
What, are we eating a Rolex?
It's one of his classics. You have to try the mouthfeel of the mignonette.
Please don't say mouthfeel.
Tonight will be madness.
See what I mean, Jim?
Welcome. We'll endeavor to make your evening as pleasant as possible.
I don't think she means that.
Oh, no.
Welcome to Hawthorn.
Here we are family. We harvest, we ferment, we gel.
They gel?
We gel.
He's not just a chef, he's a storyteller. The game is trying to guess what the overarching theme of the entire meal is going to be. You won't know till the end.
Who are you?
I am Margot. Why do you care?
I have to know if you're with us or with them. This menu,
The pictures, they're of us.
this guest list.
How did they get these?
It's not good. This entire evening.
This is just theater. It's stagecraft.
We're leaving now. Has been painstakingly planned.
This is real, isn't it?
What the hell is going on?
We now offer you a 45-second head start.
Okay, 45 seconds starts now.
This is what you're paying for.
Get out of my way.
It's all part of the menu.
It's okay.
No, we're gonna die tonight.
Yes, we are.
Yeah.
Happy birthday to you.
You told him it was my birthday?
Seemed funny about 3 hours ago.
Jim,
Mm.
I'm, you know what? We probably see in that trailer maybe every joke or close to every joke.
Yeah.
And yet they still are funny in the film. Let me ask you this though. What were your seeing the trailer and then watching the movie? Do you think the trailer, to start off with, do you think the trailer gave us what we're supposed to get? Does it give us a good capture of what we're in for?
I think so. I think I would have liked it to have been a little more vague. I think this trailer is, as you're mentioning, gives away not everything, but it gives away a lot. And for my money, it gives away too much. I'll tell you, one of my preconceptions about it is that I thought it had something to do with cannibalism. For some reason, somebody put the seed in my mind even before the trailer. So that's sort of why I thought, oh, this old kind of gag. And combined with the sort of an eat the rich kind of movie,
Yeah.
those aren't always satisfying. In fact, oftentimes they're kind of low-hanging fruit. I thought that what was it, American Beauty was one of those that I sort of thought, well, this is kind of too easy a setup. But yeah, I do think it gave away a little too much. But still, you know, it
That's okay.
yeah. Having seen it, you know, I sort of dug watching the trailer again.
Yeah.
So
Okay. Well, before we get into the spoiler zone, let me ask you this. Actually, you know what? Maybe I'll give you my take.
Sure, yeah.
Jim, here's my take. My personal take on the trailer. I think it overpromises in a way. Like, I think it's one of those things where it kind of implies more than you get. Still, I'm kind of surprised. I think it's because I just ignored this movie for whatever reason. I was just,
Yeah, me
I
too.
don't want to watch that. Nuh-uh. I don't want to see something about whining about Instagram culture, you know, social media foodie culture, which is what I thought it was about. It definitely isn't. So I kind of ignored it. And then I see the trailer and I'm like, oh, this looks far more entertaining than I thought it would be.
yeah.
But I guess that really comes now to my first question before we get into the spoiler zone, Jim. Is it a see it or a skip it for you? Is, Jim, the menu, a see it or a skip it?
I feel like I'm saying this a lot lately, but this one's a see it for me. Pretty strong see it too.
Yeah. I agree with you, Jim. I think it is a see it. Although, unlike a few films that we've seen of late, for good or bad reasons, where we've said see it in the theater, I don't think my experience was, you know, taken away that I saw it on video years later.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's definitely a see it for me. With that out of the way, Jim, let's let me get the full effect here. The spoiler zone. And yeah, Jim, let me throw it back to you and ask you what makes this a see it for you.
I thought it took sort of an atypical route. I think Ray Fiennes as the antagonist had a fairly subtle approach to it. He sort of seemed at a really weird place in his life, and I don't even know if he knew where this was fully. I mean, he knew because he planned it, but he seemed kind of puzzled by his own existence. So his was a good role. And I really liked Anya Taylor-Joy. I thought, she was in The Witch, which was to my mind, a superior horror movie almost 10 years ago now. That's where a lot of us first saw her. Or as my son called it,
Do you mean the Vivitch?
The Vivitch, yeah. Yeah. So it's been interesting to see her come up, and she's made some interesting choices. And she definitely had, she was that sort of rebellious member of the customers she didn't come across as strident, but as sympathetic, I think. So some of the performances, the Hong Chow, Academy Award nominee, Hong Chow. I thought, they haven't made her just a waitress, but she was a maitre d', sort of the second in charge. So that she had kind of an interesting presence as well. Yeah. But I have to say, there's a precision to it. There's a precision to the performances, and there's a precision even to a little bit. I think.
Well, like that gastronomy, that high haute cuisine.
Yeah, and it followed through. There's a little segment where. And I wrote it down here, so forgive me for reading, but it says, "Here we are family. We harvest, we ferment, we slaughter, we marinate, we liquefy, we spherify, we gel." And that was sort of, I just thought, that's, yeah, you gel. And in addition to the fact that it's not too far removed from a lot of that sort of fancy restaurant scene currently, it doesn't get too far away from what some of these, Michelin star restaurants, not that I know from experience, but what they provide. So yeah, just a really precise, really crisp. I tell you, I started this very late last night, and I thought, well, we'll see how far I get into. I started it at 2 a.m. and I was still engaged by the time it ended at 4 a.m. And I thought, I've stayed up too late. I hope I can sleep in, but. And I was engaged throughout. So
that, Jim, that's a great comment. That was same for me. I was engaged the whole time. Now, mind you, that said, at the end of it, there was a part of me thinking, and this may kind of summarize, in one line, my feelings about this film, is I felt like it's like, wow, this would be. If you gave Rod Serling a modern budget with movie stars, you would get this, what I think in some ways is an interesting Twilight Zone or Outer Limits episode. More Twilight Zone, I think. That said...
Sorry, I wasn't laughing, I was coughing.
I think it lacked, and we've used this term before, but I think it's especially apropos here, Jim. I'm sure you can see what's coming. It lacks satirical bite. It's almost as, it's not as airy as some of the food in that, but I think it's just not as hard-hitting as it could be. And I certainly have my ideas on why that is, but first let me ask, do you agree with that? Do you think the satire is a little, not gentle, but maybe it doesn't quite hit its mark?
I've seen that criticism from a lot of 2024 satire, or, satire in the last couple of years is, you sort of have to wonder if filmmakers are worried about alienating, like so many of us these days, alienating certain segments of the population. And also sometimes if you watch satire from back in the day, it can be a lot harder. I didn't have a problem with that. I thought the constituents in the customer base there, the 10 group, or what, the half dozen groups that they had. I thought they all played their part. Somebody mentioned it was Willy Wonka method of sort of introducing the guests, and they each had their own sins that
Yep.
they were there to atone for. But at the very end, when he's confronting them, he says, you guys steal money, and you guys are just sort of making your careers on what we do, and he goes up to the rich couple and he says, name me one thing you've eaten here. You've eaten here a dozen times. Name me one dish, so the satire isn't super strong. But I think that the customers play their roles as the sort of the what's the word I'm looking for? As the marks, I guess.
You know what? That isn't quite the thing I meant. I don't.
Yeah.
I'm not actually saying it's pulling its punch. Like, it doesn't want to offend too many people. Like Barbie, I think it's like, wow, this is lightweight because Mattel has notes. I think here, it's maybe a storytelling problem.
Okay.
Like, I'm expecting in something like this, half of these characters dying in some grotesque yet poetically, like, it's really kind of an upscale Saw, like those terrible Saw movies, torture porn. And I'm not expecting torture porn, but I am expecting some more like drama, like some more real feeling of peril, and while at the same time, Schadenfreude when one of them gets it. And we don't actually get a lot of that. We don't learn enough, I think, about why they're there early enough to kind of go, oh, that really is a terrible person. I mean, Tyler, I liked his demise.
Yeah.
I got the gag with the ring cutting, the ring finger left, finger. It's like, oh, get that. But the others, it's like, they all die. And I think, and that's maybe the other thing is because there's another, let's say, storytelling thing going on, maybe a theme or a point. Chef Slowick does say, hey, none of you really fought that hard. Hey, if you did, you could have gotten away. And why do they stay? What is the real difference between Aaron / Margot / Aaron, and the others? Is she is just not that interested in this kind of experience.
Yeah.
Whereas the others, they want the next course. They want to stay for dessert. And I think that is, Jim, I think that's the thing that maybe it's almost like there's a competition here for where we're going with this. And I think that's why it just doesn't quite land as well as it could. Why I felt, and I think there's one other thing, but why I felt at the end when I think something like this, Jim, should be, I'm good. I'm not sure I'm going to eat for a while. And I get the cook, the thief, his wife and her lover. I get that kind of, are we going to start eating someone or something gross like that? And I'm glad they don't deliver that, but they should deliver something where we're uncomfortable. And that's maybe the other thing is that we're unlike other movies we've seen that have way more heft.
Yeah.
We're put in the position, we're seeing this through Margot's eyes. She's the hero, and we get to be with her. And so that's another thing. It's like, well, it's not talking about me. I'm good here.
Yeah.
Those people are terrible. Does that make sense?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I mean, there's definitely decisions made and perhaps
Decisions made. Choices.
decisions were made. Well, I have to say, on one hand, they all sort of suffer at the very end. Most of them suffer the same fate, or the remaining ones suffer the same fate in that they become human s'mores. And I have to, thumbs up to whoever came up with the marshmallow chainmail that they all were forced to wear, and the little chocolate hats. I thought that was kind of visionary. But at the same time, they're not given their own sort of, a la Willy Wonka.
Yeah.
They're not given their own fates as much. That might have been a time thing as well. But yeah, I was sort of expecting a little. When you look at it, the ending actually ended up being fairly gentle. All the deaths.
I've got the s'mores.
Oh yeah,
overhead on the screen there.
And that was genius. But most of those deaths occur off screen, and the real sort of
and they all say thank you.
Yeah,
You know?
yeah. And the real
Sorry.
climax really is him making a cheeseburger for Margot, and
Where she gets away.
It's very well done because you can sort of see it's almost meditative for Ray Fiennes after for Chef Slowik after making these sort of
The supplemental course.
reductions of this. I almost said deduction. Reductions of this and gelled that and simulated the other thing.
It's
She
the
says
only time he
to
smiles.
she says to Tyler earlier on, "Oh, go ahead, eat your rock." Because when they have the scallop course with the rock from the shore, but and I don't think she consumes anything during the whole movie. She might have had a few drinks, but I don't think she actually eats
She does
anything.
taste. You do see, I was looking for that, Jim, and
Oh, okay.
she does every now and then. There's a bit of salad that goes in her mouth, and there's that. What is the course? Let me see if I can't find it here, Jim.
Cheeseburger at the end, of course, but
Yeah, she takes a good bite.
It's a really great scene where he's just sort of lovingly making this cheeseburger, hearkening back to his past, and when she goes into his office and sees the
We
the
do
18
see her eat from Man's Folly.
yes, yeah.
Dungeness crab, fermented yogurt whey, dried sea lettuce, umeboshi, and, of course, Jim, kelp.
I like those little those course cards there. I thought that was kind of wry and funny, but it's sort of a gentle ending, really. On paper, it's a very gentle ending, and perhaps that's part of it there.
No, that's true, and I think, but again, back to the satire of the piece.
Mm-hmm.
I think that is where maybe fail is too harsh, because I'm still saying it's a see it.
Oh yeah,
but I think for a satire to really land, you got to commit to the bit and make sure that the audience squirms a little.
Mm.
And I mean, because we're with Margot, now, even as I say that, I'm down with being with Margot.
Oh yeah,
She's not just a great character, but you know what? It's again another one where it's two in a row now, Jim, where the sex worker does okay.
Yeah,
and is actually by the villain treated with real respect.
Yeah,
Like knowing who she is without shame or judgment.
mm-hmm. And almost there's a camaraderie there too. Like we're both in the.
We're both shit. I know a shit shoveler.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're both into the experience because, of course, you can see I can see the ad in my sex worker specializing in GFE, or the girlfriend experience.
Yeah.
Speaking of which, this might be a perfect time to sort of change things, but I wanted to ask you, Jim, when did you realize that Margot was a sex worker?
Yeah, it was fairly late in the game. I I didn't think they'd go there. I knew something was up. They didn't really talk about the initial. Well, they did mention her, but they didn't give you any backstory about Tyler's initial date. I can't remember her name, but she's not on screen. She doesn't show up. I think he ultimately says we broke up. So something was up, right? And also something. I mean, I guess I probably should have figured it out because it was $12.50 a plate, or $12.50 a person, for the experience. And I thought, why would he shell this out and bring this girl? Like, what's their relationship? But they seemed almost. Maybe he's done this with her before. They seem kind of to have known each other a little bit, going into it, because they had a bit of a
bit of repartee,
little bit of that kind of fighty kind of thing. They would,
it could be though. She's just really good at her job, which is providing the total girlfriend experience.
Yeah, knows how to read people and respond to them. Yeah, no, it took. Yeah, I didn't really realize until we're almost upon it. But they didn't play her like that either. I don't think. I knew something was up. But wasn't sure what.
For myself, I was the second she said it's your dime.
Oh yeah,
on the dock.
Yeah,
because there's right before that moment she sees the old man coming down with his wife. The rich couple.
That's right. Yeah.
Sees her and she's like, oh, I didn't want to see that.
Yeah.
I did not want to see him. And then when he's talking about how much, and she kind of pats him, leans on him, but is looking like she almost has a sort of a resigned kind of, well, as she leans on him, but she's like, it's your dime. And there's no, I'm sorry, Jim, but there's no way an actual girlfriend would go, oh, well, it's your money.
Yeah.
There'd be more in that moment. And I'm like, oh, sex worker. And then everything up to that just kept confirming my suspicion. Including how uncomfortable the staff were. And going back to that discomfort, which I thought was like a great commitment to the bit, was I've done this with dinner parties, Jim. You have this moment where you're trying to put together a group, the right group, where everyone's going to get along, where everyone has fun. You've been to them. And here's this guy, anyone who's got a Paco jet. It's the total experience, including the clientele. And all of a sudden there's a wrench and they're trying to figure it out. You do at a restaurant. Oh my goodness, we're out of that. What do you mean the cooler broke down? You and I have both worked in food service. These things happen where you gotta roll with it. And so I thought that was good. And I liked the way that they're just like, you're wrong. You're not supposed to be here. This is jamming up our thing. Because now all of a sudden they even have to start thinking about the consequences of what they're doing. Because this person wasn't part of their, everyone deserves to die here. Everyone needs to be born anew,
Which makes me wonder what the deal was with the Tyler's girlfriend. Like, obviously, they didn't want to put any innocence, through this. So maybe she was just as odious as he was. Although he didn't seem to be able to know how to talk to women very well. He was sort of patting her, or maybe that was part of their relationship. I don't know, but he was pretty condescending to
the sex worker, shock of shocks. But what does she do? She calls him out because he didn't even ask the name of the sous chef. Remember that moment? I'd imagine anyone who would be a girlfriend with this is going to be a terrible, terrible, terrible human being. And would deserve to die. But who knows? Maybe that's her opportunity. I like the hint of a backstory, but without giving it all to us, I'm like, oh, who knows? What we do know is Tyler's such a piece of that he would go, well, I really need to go. And even though I know how it's all going to play out, what the hell? Just a worker. Sorry. Just a
Yeah. That's right. Yeah. He's willing to sacrifice her.
Willing without
Yeah.
acknowledging, just treating her like crap the whole time.
You're such a child, or, you know, whatever.
All his
he says to her.
patronizing crap.
Yeah.
Now, him knowing what was going on, that was a surprise to me.
Mhm.
And when that's revealed, and I'm like, oh, now all his behavior makes sense. You know, that
Yeah.
he was just a real asshole.
Yeah.
Okay, Jim, I kind of went on a bit of a tangent there, but I think now's the time I wanted to kind of change it up a bit, or maybe even 10 minutes ago, and ask you if let's imagine we're not supposed to empathize with and be that Margot isn't the person we're supposed to be viewing this through. We obviously are, but if we weren't, who are we in this crowd? I got to admit, like when I think of you and I, what we do as critics, you know, such as we are, small, tiny, non-income earning critics, are we Tyler? Are we the power tasters? Well, we're certainly not rich like that. We go to Tim Hortons after we see a movie.
Yes, that's true.
Are we the Bloom woman, Eileen, whatever, the critic, the
yes,
big
yeah.
critic?
Yeah.
You know,
And her
I don't know, what
publisher.
do you think of that?
Well, it was funny. I was looking at the Rotten Tomatoes sort of breakdown, and a lot of these, basically it has, I think, 88% on Rotten Tomatoes from the critics, but a lot of them are sort of reviews, little summaries with the word "but" in it. You know, a freshly delivered tale with just a soupçon of disappointment. And I thought, oh my God, I just sort of made that up. I'm not quoting, but you know, that kind of thing. I thought, oof, these guys are like the people in the movie. I think you and I are more the hamburger crowd. I would hope that I wouldn't be invited to this final meal there. I mean, it's a good question. I think, and I can defend us because I think this is it. A lot of people are there in sort of bad faith. And I think that's part of the motivating factor of why Chef Slowick has decided this. And the only one that isn't there in bad,
insincere.
Yeah. Or, you know, the fanboy, you know, he's there for the experience and he obviously worships the chef, but he's into the food for the wrong reason. The others just, you know, the movie star sees it as an opportunity. The writer and the publisher have their own motivations. The money guys are just being, you know, they're just douchey and that, you know, they're there for like, hey, this will be great. And, you know, and
something to brag
like
about later.
Status. Yeah, exactly. I mean, so for a lot of these people, it's a bad faith experience, except for Margot, who's sort of a passive passenger, and she decides to rail against the setup. And in that case, you know, she's cooperating.
An accidental passenger.
Yes, she's not cooperating, but she's not bad faith either.
Yeah, no. The only sincere person in the whole crowd, the only one who isn't living with a lie. Like I was trying to think, you kind of get the businessman and that couple, you know, the elderly couple.
Judith Light, who's the boss?
Yeah, like wow, Judith, that's Judith Light.
Yeah.
Well, let me ask this though. I think there's still we all are still kind of vulnerable to this. I really did. I think of some of my more, you know, back when I had when I was making city hall money and I could afford an entire year of dinner parties. I mean, I went maybe not. Yeah, I don't think I did gastronomy. You know that I did not own a Paco jet even when I was making those dollars. But I've certainly taken pictures of my food. I've certainly,
Oh, yeah.
I've had some great dining experiences where, say that I went. I'm thinking of here in Winnipeg, Jim, where we have Deer Almond, the restaurant on the river. And while it's one of my career highlights that I helped with that when I was at the city, I got to admit, I went a couple of times just because I could say, I was there,
Yeah.
And, I could not for the life of me, Jim, I swear to God, I have no clue what was actually, I know there was a meat course. And I know for my date, who really wanted to go, and so totally kissed my ass until I took her and then never heard from again.
Oh, my gosh.
Which is probably, well, I don't know, it's a bit of justice, a bit of poetic justice. I had to arrange a vegetarian meal for her, but otherwise, yeah, like, a local star chef. I cannot remember what I had. I know there was meat and there was a potato involved somewhere along the line, but I could not tell you the meal itself. I couldn't tell you what it tasted like. I think that's when Slowick is telling us this stuff, I have to think about it to kind of relate to it, even though I think we could all relate to that. I was there because I wanted to say I was there.
Yeah. 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 And in that sense, it's bad faith. I don't think we're as bad as the crowd there. And these are sins that I think, are suffered by restaurateurs throughout the world. Isn't there some place that says, don't take pictures of your food or something to that along those lines? Yeah, no,
well, meanwhile, the only one is like, why are you worrying about that? You're paying for this.
Yeah.
They're providing a service.
At the same time,
at least in this one, they do kill themselves as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And you have to sort of think of the sort of cultiness of that, from the inside. But,
well, they're all freaking monks.
Yeah.
They stay there. They're all like, all that.
We are family. Yeah.
Yeah. It's interesting, I guess, the people who wrote it. It was a Hollywood screenwriter who was at this Norwegian restaurant, like, and he tells another writer, it's like, hey, I was at this, and they come up with this. Maybe that's it. It's like, yeah, you know what? I'm not picking on regular folk. I am picking on my class.
Yeah.
And by using the sex worker as the person that the audience is, maybe that's a conscious choice. It's like, don't worry, it's not about you. I am because everyone except the mother.
Oh, yeah, the mother.
But except the mother and whatever the hell's going on with the monks.
Yeah.
But if you just talk about the front of house, let's say, they're all rich assholes. Everyone is an asshole and a rich asshole. I liked even the one saving grace when the movie star, name can't remember, but played by
John Leguizamo.
Thank you. He finally does something halfway decent and goes, yeah, but what about her? Pointing at his long-suffering, although snotty and stealing assistant.
Yeah.
But, long-suffering assistant. And it's the only time where you see a little bit of decency come out of him, come out of any of them except for Judith Light's character near the end. But when he's, well, what about her? And then, where'd you go to school? Brown. Student loans? No.
Yeah.
You're dying.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't even have to justify that.
Yeah.
And then
John
there's
Lee-
that brief moment when she looks back and there's the Judith Light, just go. Because they're all saying,
Yeah.
thanks, chef. Thanks, chef.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's funny. John Leguizamo is just credited as a movie star. By the way, I was just
Very
making
cool.
sure I
Oh,
had
look
that
at
right.
that,
So I don't think they
DMG.
even name him.
DMG
Oh,
is
hi.
in the house.
Hello from.
Let's give him a quick air horn. There we go.
There you go.
Coming back to my question though, so yeah, maybe that's. I got to admit, I'm still I've flirted with some of this. Maybe if I had a ton of money. Although I got to admit that Tyler, because he is kind of in a way, more villain than Ralph Fiennes is, isn't he?
Yeah, I mean, but it's a pretty subtle movie because he's not like, whoa, I invited you here knowing you'd die. I mean, it just sort of comes out.
Yeah.
And he's very sort of a bland kind of a villain. It's a really, he's great.
Oh, come on, man.
What's that? Oh, yes. Yeah. The big clap. But it almost.
Here, do you need like big applause?
Sorry, what was I saying?
Sorry, man.
No, it's okay. It's okay. So Tyler is kind of a bit of a stealth role. Like I thought, and this is probably old Hollywood thinking, he was sort of, the billing as Ray Fiennes, Nicholas Hoult, and Anya Taylor-Joy. And I thought we were following this couple, and then it became obvious that they weren't really a couple.
Yeah.
And then, even his exit is sort of like very subtly done as well. And it's like, oh, okay, so, we're left with her. So we're not following this dyad anymore. It was probably that a lot of the shots are from her point of view specifically.
Well, I think that's exactly it, though. We were never following the dyad. I think that's the whole, Jim, that's the whole, like right from the beginning, not a dyad. We're with her. Right down to it was in and it was even in the trailer.
Mm-hmm.
So they're on the boat and they're going to the Hawthorn Island.
Yeah.
And they're eating whatever the hell the oyster was, whatever the hell the thing was. And there is the moment where he's like, it's about the mouthfeel.
Yeah.
And she says, don't say mouthful. And I'm like, that's got to be intentional. Like it's not even, it's kept in, and it's like, and of course I don't think I quite did the math when I first heard it, but I keep thinking about it now, and I'm like, she's a sex worker. She might be the girlfriend experience, but it's still, she's a sex worker, and does that mean something different?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and we were talking before, and I didn't pick up on that at all. I didn't hear that myself. When I say follow the dyad, I don't necessarily mean that we would follow them together. I thought that we would be following them on different sort of parallel tracks. I should just be a little more precise in my explanation. So when his story ended, and we weren't quite at the end of the movie, I was kind of, that was kind of an interesting turn anyway.
Yeah.
and kind of abrupt, not surprising, but kind of abrupt. And
I think it is. You wonder where he goes, what was said,
yeah,
but I'm kind of down with that ambiguity.
yes, yeah.
Here's a question for you. Now I'm moving around on my feelings about this film now.
No?
Now that we sort of talked about where we could be at with these customers. Do you think, does this film bolster or challenge conventional wisdom?
Oh. In that it shows sort of an overinflated, the whole kind of ridiculousness of the fancy
Mhm.
the Michelin kind of starred
The
restaurant scene.
gastronomy.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that kind of thing. At the same time, it's sort of like it's like faulting fashion. Sometimes people see a fashion show and there'll be some ridiculously, like if somebody's wearing a 3-foot tall hat. A lot of times people forget that art is based on whimsy, and not all these things are to be taken seriously. So
I remember you saying once you were mad about something. This is years ago. And it's like, oh, don't you get it? All fashions starts on a goof.
yeah,
It's a goof. It's making fun of something else.
yeah, and then it sort of gets distilled into something, something a little more mainstream as the time goes on. But yeah, I mean, does it bolster or challenge? I don't know if it challenges much myself. It just sort of goes a little deeper than and it is very current, right? So what's the hook? It's this, I'm gonna start to write a little list of movies that hinge on being out of cell phone service. this is just because it happens. It's sort of a
You have to do that now.
Yeah.
It's like, what about the phone? Apparently, she could figure out a radio.
Who'd to think I'd not be able to get a hold of anybody in this lead mine? That.
Just another challenge for a writer to figure out.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm kind of caught here. I think for the most part, honestly, it's DMD chimed in. I'll get to that in a second. But I think for the most part for me, Jim, and let me see if I can't, I'll pull up the image. Bear with me, my friend.
Absolutely. While you're doing that, I should mention the Winnipeg connection. Mark Mylod, the director, I'm not sure if you're familiar with this movie. He directed The Big White.
Really?
Which is one of Robin Williams, which was shot in Winnipeg.
Here in Winnipeg.
Yeah, so amongst other places, but largely in Winnipeg. And I was walking by the Cafe Italia, or Bar Italia. Years ago. And I saw...
Where all the film people
I saw a crowd.
Or at least did when I was in.
Yeah. A crowd surrounding one person who was probably about 5'6" or something like that.
Williams. Yeah.
It was Robin Williams holding court. And so I didn't.
Okay. You know what? I'm going to cut you off there because we still got to wrap this up, eh? But
yeah,
I think this image, supplemental course, a cheeseburger, just a well-made cheeseburger, crinkle cut fries, which I do. They've become my home French fry of choice. McCain's
really,
super fry, extra crispy, crinkle cut.
No,
but I think, and it's weird. It is a satire or a skewering of the uber rich.
Mm-hmm.
But it's also very American, and it picks, what we'd almost say froofy, insubstantial, weird fare, with all the hyper, with all the act around it. And putting as the alternate, this, it does. I love a smash burger, you can't, but to say that one is authentic and the other isn't is, it's like, something you'd said earlier, Jim, it's almost too easy. It's like, oh, well, the rich and they're weird shit. And here's this regular person. And, oh, the chef was a regular person once who just enjoyed the pleasure of a regular working class fare. And so I kind of like, I agree with you. It weirdly, it questions a little, but it mostly says, yeah, you know what? Rich people are weird, but what are you going to do, rich people? And, just be happy you're a regular person who loves regular Joe food, just like Donald Trump, And so, that said, and here's me talking out of the other side of my mouth, Jim, that the sex worker is the one who gets to live, that she is always treated with respect. She's never actually shamed for her job. Never once. Even Tyler doesn't. He patronizes, he treats her like the help.
Yeah.
That's it. And, but she is never once, Jim, she's never once shamed for what she does. There's a moment where she's like, oh, you're not going to be that asshole. With Ralph Fiennes, and he's like, no. I know service worker. I know about providing an experience, and you don't think he's winking. Like, I didn't. I did not think he was winking. I think he's like, no, you are one of us. You provide. You are a service worker. And I think that actually challenges a little bit of the conventional wisdom, especially in movies where hookers are always presented they're always presented in a negative light.
Yeah.
And that they have to stop being, if they're going to live the life, and she does not say, I'm going to give up my sex worker ways. She doesn't like the job anymore, but you're not like, she doesn't get free by renouncing. She does not have to be born anew. She just gets to get away because she figures it out. Her own agency, her own guts, her own gumption. She doesn't just a great character.
Yeah.
And that I think challenges the status quo a little bit.
Yeah. I see where you're going with that. Yeah. Their ability to read people too, from years on the job is something I'm sure you got to be able to do in her positions. So,
we do have a couple of comments before we move in, before we get into the end game here. DMG says, I liked this flick, but didn't love it. I just wish that the film had been better. More thought out, more refined, great premise, but left me a bit meh. And I can totally see that, DMG. There is that is the way I felt at the beginning of the show. I'm not sure I quite feel that way now that we're getting into the end game, now that we've talked about it a bit. But we also have, Jim, Mobius, new person in the chat. Let's you know what? That deserves an air horn. Mobius, new to the channel, but you guys are likable. Oh, well, thank you, Mobius. You guys, and I'm enjoying this review of a movie I haven't even heard of. And he's now subbed. Thank you, sir. Oh, let's, that's full applause. And Jim, definitely, I think one of my favorite comments we have received, and no knock on Dragon Movie Guy, also a great YouTuber, another channel worth looking at, Mobius, but he says, I like the idea of the long form meandering discussions around film. Cool format.
That's us.
Sir, you have found a home here.
Yes, exactly. Who has 2 thumbs and is meandering, or who has 4 thumbs and is meandering. No, that's good. I mean, yeah.
Yeah, no, love it.
I
Yeah.
dig it. So,
Yeah. Okay, Jim, before we get into final thoughts, let me ask you this. Do you think, is this film going to be remembered? By you, is this one of those ones that gets remembered for a long time or not? What do you think? And that goes for everyone in the chat too.
I think by virtue of the fact that it's, I'd say it's genre. It's maybe, horror adjacent. I think those films are easy to remember because they're in a genre. You know what I mean? Like it's as good as this, but not as good as that, that kind of thing. So I think by virtue of the fact that it's not just a genuine, like a general kind of melodrama or something that falls just in a sort of a larger category, I think this one will be memorable because it is sort of what it is, kind of a black comedy / horror, or light on horror, but yeah. So for me, it would be easy to sort of categorize it as memorable.
Yeah. Let me then, you know what? For myself, Jim, for moi, I gotta admit, I think this one's actually now going to stick with me for a bit. Will this be considered a great? I don't think so. But a very good film, a very good film. And I like the way you put it, that it's, it fits in a genre, or, say maybe a mashup of genres. Doesn't go as far as X, but better than Y.
Yeah.
So, but for me, I now appreciate it a bit more, and I do, and this kind of gets into, just before we get into final thoughts, or maybe this is really the start of final thoughts. Jim, let me ask you this, my friend. Do you have any questions for the director?
Yeah, I was thinking that we only really find out where 2 of the characters come from, and one's a bit of a dodge. So we know that Ray Fiennes is from Iowa, I believe, initially, or Chef Slowick is from Iowa. So he got his start in the Midwest. And then the Margot / Aaron character, we're led to
Massachusetts.
Yeah, initially comes from she said Nebraska as her dodge, but then says Brockton. I don't know much about Brockton. I believe it's kind of a working class town. So I would ask the director, is where they're from, does that fit in? Is that a sort of symbolism for what he considers real, what he considers sort of salt of the earth types, which the movie seems to champion and rail against the elites? So that's what was that an intentional choice there?
That's a great question. And maybe we can get if I get my crap together and cut it out, and we'll put it to social media. Myself, Jim, I didn't think when we went into this show, I got to admit, Jim, I was like, this is a pretty good movie. It's certainly seeable. I can easily recommend it as a see it. But I was thinking this is not as good as I now do think it is. Not that that's actually relevant to my question for the director.
Sure.
My question for the director of the menu is mouthful versus mouthfeel. What was the intention there?
Mm-hmm.
I think I have a speculation. I have an idea, but I'd really, if there was an itch the director could scratch for me, it's that don't say mouthful when he obviously said mouthfeel.
Yeah.
I would love that itch scratched.
Sure. Yeah.
Again,
no,
I suspect I know exactly what it was, especially given the look of what she's slurping down. But
yeah. Yeah. That's a good point.
Yeah. That would be my question. Jim, any other final thoughts? TMG, what would a Winnipeg version of the menu look like? Any high society classism north of the border to poke fun at in this scenario? DMG, I actually shared my own bit of local foodie shame earlier. Catch it in the replay. Second half of the show when we get a little more personal. Jim, what else would you like to say before we wrap it up?
Yeah, no, I just I sort of went into this. I didn't know what to expect, and I thought it was there's something clean about this this movie, and I don't, in terms of the storytelling that I quite like. Like it was fairly light on its feet.
Kitchen was awfully clean as well.
It was, but yeah, there was a definite sort of yeah, I just clean. That's how I can sort of explain the storytelling that I thought was well handled. And yeah, this guy directs a few movies, one movie every 5 years, and he's actually worked a lot on television as well. But yeah, it was interesting it was a good, yeah, I was surprised by it. So
yeah, I as I said before, but I'll probably edit that out. I want to say that I came into this with a high enough opinion of the film, but I'm coming out of our conversation with a higher opinion. I think I've appreciated a bit more. I do. Oh, what was it again? Something you brought up. Oh, Paco Jet.
Oh,
I had to look at what I did, Jim. I was like, what the
creates the feeling of snow.
Jet.
Yeah.
Originally from the early 80s, originally invented to make like really nice ice cream. That's what it was for. It keeps it frozen and really purees it. But I guess resort and club chefs, like the real, hey, we could use this to puree this and do mousses and do all this other fancy foodie. And I was just like, that's a nice bit. And that they bring it in a la Chekhov's gun or, Chekhov's welder, that because the maitre d', she gets brained by the fucking
Paco
jet.
Yes, exactly.
The Paco Jet, which I thought was like kind of, hey, that's funny. But anyway, for anyone who wants to know what Paco Jet is, I've just explained that. Because I think that's even kind of thematic to, here's this thing that's become a super chefy tool when really it was just designed to make really good ice cream. Heaven forbid it was just done for that. There you go.
Yeah, no, it's the Lethal Weapon nail gun all over again, or Chekhov's.
Well, listen, everyone, thank you all so very much for coming. Of course, please like and subscribe, and don't forget to ring that bell. Welcome Mobius to the show.
Yeah.
I hope you stick around for a while. And, of course, DMG, always great seeing you here. Thanks so much. Good night, everybody.